Friend, you have no idea of the ripple effects of you just simply saying yes to Jesus Christ. No idea the blessing you could bring to the world. No idea the chain of events that you could start. So let me ask you a simple question. Where does the Lord want you to simply say yes to Him today? And by obeying God, I mean, why do we say yes? And I don't just mean yes in big things, massive things, like God is calling some of you to leave America and to be a missionary overseas. God is calling some of you, by the way. And He wants you to say yes. But I don't just mean big things like that. Big things like, God is calling you to study so that you could one day be a pastor in His church, which God is also asking of some of you. But I mean, say yes in little things. Like, don't buy snack food for your house. For some of you, that's a big thing. I'd rather be a missionary. But no, I'm just not going to bring it into the house. No. To say yes to, you know what? I want to really get to know God. I just don't feel I know about Him. I don't know Him. I want to spend a little more time with Him. I'm going to set my clock in the morning 30 minutes before normal. So I can spend 30 minutes with God in the morning, reading my Bible, praying, worshiping God. I need to do that. I'm going to say yes to, there's a challenging person in my extended family. Before Christmas, I'm going to call them, even though it's hard. I'm going to say, yes, Lord, not just 30 years ago, today. I'm going to share my faith even though it makes me a little uncomfortable. Yes, why should we say yes to God? Not just in big things, but in small things, not just in the past, but in the present. Here's why. 3 reasons, and I'll close with this. Number 1, because saying yes to God is the way we say, I love you, Lord. Jesus says the first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. How do I practically love the Lord? Do I walk around all day, I love you, Lord, I love you, Lord, I love you, Lord? Is that how it works? Is it I write love poems to the Lord? Do I try to stir up loving feelings? God, I just want to feel more love. No, Jesus is so much more practical. He says, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. When you say yes to God in an area that the Lord is speaking to you about, it could be the snack food thing. It could be shut the TV off. It could be get off social media. When you say yes to God in some little thing, yes, I will pick up a phone and call a family member or call an old friend. I'm going to do it. Every time you say yes to God, you know what you're saying? I love you, Lord. I'm doing it for you. I love you, God. Every time. I love you, Lord. Here's the second reason you say yes to God. Because obedience will cause you to live your best life ever. It will. It will. There is a God who created you, who knows you better than you know yourself, who formed you in the womb, knows every neural connection in your brain, knows how you function, and knows how you will flourish. And I don't care what your fantasy is for your life, or how many life coaches you got to set out your goals and work towards your dreams. As I say to my grandchildren all the time, you will never come up with a better plan for your life than the plan God has. Ever. Ever. You can't imagine what God has for you. The Apostle Paul says However, as it's written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God prepared for those who love him. You can't come up with a better plan for your life than the plan God has. Obedience is a way to say, I love you to the Lord. Obedience is a way for you to live your best life ever. And obedience is the way that you will have maximum impact and bring maximum blessing to this world. Let me close with this story. How many of you are familiar with the name Edward Kimball? Edward Kimball. That's what I thought. No one. No one. Edward Kimball was a Christian guy living in the middle of the 19th century who taught a class of young men in Sunday school. And he felt like the Holy Spirit was saying to him, Ed, I want you to go after every single teenage boy in this class and make sure they have a saving relationship with me. And so just on his own, he was just a working guy. He went after every single teenager, shared the gospel with them with conviction, and led every one of the teenagers to Jesus. Well, there was one teenager in the class that was particularly uninterested, and he went hard after this kid. And this kid was working in his uncle's shoe store and followed him into the shoe store, followed him into the back room where he was stocking shoes, explained the gospel to him, and that teenager in the stockroom knelt down and gave his life to Christ. That young man's name was Dwight L. Moody, D.L. Moody. He became a famous evangelist, led thousands and thousands and thousands of people to Jesus. At one of his crusades, a young man named Wilbur Chapman gave his life to Christ, and he became an evangelist. And at one of his crusades, a baseball player wandered in, a famous baseball player named Billy Sunday, and that baseball player gave his life to Christ and left baseball and became an evangelist. And at one of his crusades, a young man named Mordecai Ham gave his life to Christ. And he went around sharing the gospel. Well, decades later, at Charlotte, North Carolina, some guys decided they wanted to hold a revival meeting in their town. And they knelt down in a field and they prayed, Lord, do something here tonight that will touch the whole world. This Mordecai Ham was preaching, and a teenage boy wandered in. His name was Billy Frank. And Billy Frank listened, liked what he heard, came back the next night. Third night, he gave his life to Christ. If you haven't guessed, Billy Frank was better known as Billy Graham, William Franklin Graham. And through his ministry, it's said that over 200 million people heard Billy Graham preach. And almost 2 billion people, through some literature, movie, or radio show, were influenced by Billy Graham. Edward Kimball had no idea when he said yes to Jesus of the ripple effects that would be brought to the world, the blessings that he was starting by just, okay, I'll go and wander into this shoe store and share the gospel with this one kid. Friend, you have no idea of the ripple effects of you just simply saying yes to Jesus Christ. No idea the blessing you could bring to the world. No idea the chain of events that you could start. So let me ask you a simple question. Where does the Lord want you to simply say yes to him today? Yes, Lord.